Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. Okay, let's dive into the mailbag. At John Middlekauff, Instagram, fire into those direct messages and get your question answered here. This is from Nate. John, Nate here. Love the pod. Have been listening for years. I appreciate your honest opinions on player contracts and what you think their value is. I find myself agreeing with your takes quite often. This Nate guy's smart. I've been a lifelong Chiefs fan and can remember wearing my Elvis Grbac jersey in the late 90s as a kid. Former 49er Elvis Grbac. I don't want to take any of what we currently have with Mahomes and Reed for granted, and I want to see them to maximize the window we are in. My question is about Chris Jones and his latest holdout for wanting a new contract. He signed a 4-year, $80 million contract with a little under $40 million guaranteed in 2020. I think Chris is an amazing talent and is the foundation of our defensive line, but I'm a little frustrated that he is holding out for more years or money already. What are your thoughts on what Veach should do? Well, here's the thing. I understand when guys like Chris Jones, like my pushback on Saquon Barkley is not only have you been paid a premium, like you guys have been kind of irrelevant. Like your best moment was this 9-18. So like, are you a winning player? Like in theory, you should be, but you want $40 million guaranteed at a running back position when people aren't paying that. Like I'm hesitant to do it. Right? I get hesitant to pay non-winning players. For example, the 49ers broke the bank with that same contract, 4 years, $80 million, 40 guaranteed to Javon Hargrave. Well, what's Javon Hargrave's resume? Played for the Steelers, wins, plays for the Eagles, wins more. Niners, we'll take him. We'll pay you premium. I like paying premiums to winning players. Stephon Diggs, I do support. A little crazy, can be a little, up and down. So can I. But he has proven with Minnesota and Buffalo, you make me the number one option on a good team, we are going to win. They won in Minnesota going to the playoffs. They've been winning in Buffalo. Now, as a star receiver, it's not his fault. Like I'm not blaming him for the reason they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs or 2 years ago when they lost to the Chiefs. Like Stephon Diggs might be a little crazy. He's a winning player. I know that for a fact. Chris Jones is a stud. Chris Jones, like you said, is the staple of your defensive line and is on the best team in the league. 3 Super Bowls, 5 years. So I just pulled it up. He is going to be 28. He's going to be 29 here in a couple weeks. So he's looking at it going, well, Hargrave just got $40 million. My guaranteed money's up. So what do holdouts usually have? Like, why do they happen? It's all about money. Which we know this. Like, why is Diggs acting weird? He wants more money. That's part of life. It's part of the business that these guys are in. So I think I would try to just guarantee him a little more money, maybe guarantee the rest of his little Aaron Donald style, just give some more money. But you can get rid of Tyreek Hill, even though he's a Hall of Fame player too, and an unreal player. Like Tyreek Hill, peak of his power still. But like you could figure it out at the wide receiver position. You still have Kelsey. You can't just like get rid of Chris Jones. Well, not currently today. you got no replacement for him. What are you going to do? So I think Chris has a little leverage here, and they know it. And they, from all my knowledge, they really like him. He's been, Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill. I mean, he's right there as being their defining draft picks of the organization of this run. So I would throw him some more cash. If he was 32. I would get it. Like, I don't know if I'm budging. He's 29. I think 29, 30, 31. You'd say still got several good years left. Let me bring up his game log. 17, 14, 14. So, he's been banged up over the years. Last year, didn't miss the start. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little complicated if he's got an injury history, even though it's not terrible. God, he was good last year, 15.5 sacks. Hey, John, longtime listener. After I found you on Colin's feed, love the content. Question for the pod. I'm a Northern VA native and diehard Commanders fan. I think DC should be a huge market where free agents would want to sign. With new ownership, do you think that we will be a big signing destination? Also, with Ron Rivera, if Ron Rivera fails with Howell, do you think he'll be out as probably on a short leash with new ownership? Lastly, I think our future is really bright and we are a quarterback away from being a real contender. The thing of being a quote unquote free agent destination, that's not really the way the NFL works. This isn't the NBA where like Kevin Durant, like all these guys, LeBron, you just start naming them, eventually become free agents. In the NFL, guys in their prime, like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, right? Devontae Adams, like these guys never quote unquote hit free agency. Think of all the best players in the league. Just go position by position. Trent Williams, Quentin Nelson, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Herbert, just start naming off the players. Kittle, Kelsey, Devontae, Justin Jefferson, Diggs. When do these guys ever become free agents? Now, some of them get traded, Jalen Ramsey or whatever, but they get traded. But there's no such thing as like free agency destination. If you win guys that become available because they're cut, right? Like a Dalvin Cook, Hopkins, they're good examples right now. Yeah. But usually like sweet players, like the Kevin Durant of the NBA, when the Warriors sign him, that never happens in the NFL. Ever. Because every team has the money. Like Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. If it was the NBA, you'd be like, well, what if they just play it out? Like, no, 100% both those guys are going to get extended. Like that is an objective fact. As long as they don't have devastating injuries or whatever, right? So I don't think that's not your problem. Your problem is just look who's good in the division. The Eagles got good because they drafted Carson Wentz, then Nick Foles saved him, and then Jalen Hurts saved him. Obviously, they've done a good job around, the team. The Cowboys, we got Dak Prescott, who we can nitpick all we want, and trust me, I do. But Dak Prescott's a legitimate starting quarterback, and every year, if he's healthy, you're going to win double-digit games. Now, the playoffs might be another story, but Dak Prescott's a legitimate top 12 quarterback. If you get a solid quarterback in the NFL, just a solid quarterback, like you're going to be good. If Kyler Murray is just healthy, not a Kyler Murray guy at all, but like you can contend. When I say contend, like to make the playoffs, you get a really good quarterback. The Bengals were a joke in that period, like after Marvin Lewis. Number 1 pick in the draft, get Joe Burrow, boom, sweet. Not just sweet, like fucking ass kickers. So to me, it's just quarterback. It really is. Because you've proven over the years to get good players. Good Trent Williams, good defensive linemen, good wide receivers, good running backs, good linebackers. Like any team can find that. There is an element of luck / being on the right guy when it comes to the quarterback. That's your game changer. I don't know enough about Sam Howell to feel confident one way or the other. Kind of the same thing with Jordan Love. Even though I know more about Jordan Love just in terms of he's a better physical quote unquote prospect. Jordan Love's been in the league a while now, but than Sam Howell. But both guys, like if you told me they're both good, believe you. If you told me they both stink, believe you. That's the hard part about the NFL. The likelihood that they're both good actually slim to none because that's just. But one of the guys could be, become the next Andy Dalton, could become the next Derek Carr, or they both could be just guys that are replaced in a couple years, which historically just football at that position would say, yeah, more than likely to just be replaced. It's really, really hard to play quarterback. Obviously, everyone listening knows that. But usually, how many guys become like random starters, right? Dak started immediately. Now, he was a 4th-round pick, but like Russell Wilson became a starter his rookie year. How many guys that are mid-round picks become just solidify your position? Kirk Cousins feels like an all-time outlier in recent memory. A guy that just becomes a decade-long starter who's a 4th-round pick. Just doesn't happen. Look like even Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, these guys were high 2nd-round picks. Jordan Love, if he becomes like, yeah, he was a 1st-round pick. Love the pod. Thank you for the football content during the long off season. Shit, you're telling me. As a Colts fan, it's been incredibly irritating going through so many quarterbacks ever since Luck's retirement. I was really hoping we draft Levis despite the negative comments about him. But as you know, that didn't happen. Can you give your opinion on what the team can do differently so that Anthony Richardson can thrive And do you really think the Colts will be awful as everyone says? Well, if he's just a complete project, terrible as a rookie, which is not inconceivable, yeah, it's going to be very, very hard to operate. Like, why did you really suck last year? Let's face it. Your offensive line clearly underachieved, but your quarterback play, Matt Ryan was shot. And then every guy you rolled in after him was terrible. And your coaching stunk too. Well, hiring Shane Steichen wasn't just hiring this young offensive mind. He literally just worked with this raw product who was farther along in terms of 4-year starter in college, or technically 3, but you guys know. It just won a ton of games, ton of success, and just came in very serious cat, right? And they molded this offense that kind of morphed as he got better as a thrower. And they added weapons around him. But early on with Jalen Hurts, it was pretty ugly from a passing standpoint, but he was such a good runner. You know, I do think whenever you get a player who's going to need a lot of work, would Patrick Mahomes have worked with any coach? I think a lot of people would say, yeah, the cream usually rises to the top. And I'm a big believer in that. But when in an industry like football at quarterback, so many things are out of your control. Who's your head coach? Who's your play caller? Who's blocking for you? Who's your GM putting around you? Is your organization toxic or is it high level? Like Kenny Pickett probably is not going to fail. Why? He's got Tomlin and the Steelers. He's got an infrastructure. He's got a good defense. They draft incredibly well at the skill positions. They've invested a lot more with the offensive line. They just drafted a guy in the top 15. Like, they will do everything humanly possible to maximize a guy whose ceiling is not Josh Allen's, right? But it's going to be equipped around him at a really, really high level. I think Anthony Richardson, first and foremost, get him a coach that knows how to scheme an offense that can put him in positions. And then I would say, you got to think long-term with this, take the bumps, but then over the next couple of years, can you find, like they did with Jalen Hurts, get him an A.J. Brown? Can you draft, if you're drafting 3rd overall this year, Marvin Harrison Jr., which would be kind of ironic because his dad obviously is a Colts legend, but can you do that? Like, can you put the infrastructure around him? Like, ultimately, Peyton Manning, all-time great player. Seen him play live 5 times. He's fucking incredible to watch. When he's on, it was stupid. I saw him eviscerate the Raiders several times. Also throw some picks. Same with the Eagles, actually. We played him when he was with the Colts, and Asante Samuel had a sweet pick 6. But they did a good job around surrounding him with awesome offensive talent. And I think that's the key. Like, is Brock Purdy some star, or is he a solid player, knew what to do, and got to throw to Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey? I mean, it's a huge part of football, man. Hey, John, welcome to Arizona. I know you're a Cali guy, but hopefully you get a chance to follow the Cardinals a little closer. Yeah, it's probably not gonna happen. Not sure if you caught much of the in-season Hard Knocks last year, but it was pretty clear Arizona has a pretty bootleg operation. I watched 3 or 4 episodes, and I would tend to agree, yes. I get they didn't have much of a choice, but to clean house with that coaching staff and part ways with guys who clearly didn't want to be there, like DeAndre Hopkins. As far as the draft goes, they have a need at basically every position. But I do wish they traded a little further down than they did and got Devin Witherspoon or Arizona native Bijan Robinson. Then again, getting some protection for the smallest quarterback in the league has ever seen is probably smart. Vegas has the over-under on the Cardinals win total at 4.5. To me, this screams bet the house on the over, but maybe I'm missing something. You think that us gamblers call a market inefficiency, or do you really see them being the worst team in the league? I would struggle in the NFL in general. I'm not a big over-unders better, mainly because I'm not a patient better. Like, if I'm going to invest long-term, I do that with stocks. I can't over-under. I can't wait 4 months. I'll just bet week 1 or week 4. So, and to get the payout, so I'm just getting, plus 110? Why don't I just take an underdog on a certain week at plus 110? Because to get the juice for me to make it worth it, like, I got to put a 4-figure down on an over-under bet. It doesn't do that much for me. So philosophically, just want to get it out there as a gambler. I don't gamble over unders, but if I did, I would probably be hesitant to do these teams that are in the 4-5 range because you can stink and win 6 games. Like they could be terrible and just luck into a couple games. In general, even if you're awful, you are in a lot of games in the NFL. You just are. You're not. This is not college where if you're the worst team in your conference, you're getting blown out, in conference games and maybe a couple non-conference games. If you're going 2-10, you could get blown out 8 of the 12 games. In the NFL, maybe get blown out a couple times. Like the Colts, would they just draft 4? Think how many games they were in. Shit, they beat the Chiefs. They easily could have, won some of the think about some of the games they blew. So I would be hesitant. I wouldn't touch that. But I'm with you. I don't think it's like a lock that they go under. That being said, I do think they're going to stink. They have an unproven coach. Their quarterback, he's not even healthy. So are we sure that he's going to start the year? I don't think he is, and why would you rush them to do that? I also think really quick back to your trade thing. I think when you suck, you always want to trade down. It does take 2 to tango, right? The Bears are a good example. They desperately wanted to trade down. They were going to give Fields another year. If there weren't teams, if there were no quarterbacks in the draft, they wouldn't have had big offers. Part of having a trade partner is finding the partner. If you want to get on the dance floor, no girls are going to dance with you. You're going to be dancing by yourself. So I'm not defending them and acting like they're smarter than everyone else or they made some good moves, but I don't know. Were their phones blowing up? Huge fan of the pod. Love listening to you. I'm a Packer fan, transplanted in Tennessee, and was wondering what your thoughts were on how much time will LaFleur be given for the Love experiment? And why don't you think LaFleur is mentioned as the same breath as McVay, Shanahan, or even Mike McDaniel? Well, I think the latter part of your question is easy. He inherited Aaron Rodgers, right? If Steve Kerr would have just won 4 championships with like the Wizards or the Clippers or just a little more of a random franchise, even the Clippers would be a bad example because Kawhi had already won 2, but just a team that didn't have a star, right? You just don't get as much credit as when you win it with Steph Curry, even though Steph Curry hadn't won a championship without Steve Kerr. Just a reality, right? So when you inherit Aaron Rodgers, who had won multiple MVPs and been a Super Bowl champ and been one of the best quarterbacks we'd ever seen, he's going to get more credit than you. But you can make up that gap dramatically when he leaves. So whether if Aaron has success or failure, it doesn't matter for LaFleur. But if LaFleur this year, let's just say, goes 10-7, let's say they won the division at 10-7 and Jordan Love is just solid. Throws like 26 touchdowns, 10 picks. They're a good running team. Their team's just good. Matt LaFleur would get a shit ton of credit and well-deserved. But I do think it's hard when you inherit. Does Mike Shanahan get as much credit as he should for winning back-to-back Super Bowls? Probably not. Why? Because he inherited John Elway. John Elway had already been to 3. Now, he'd never won one, but it's hard when you have an established all-time great, right? Tim Cook, for example, pretty sure since Steve Jobs has died, Apple has dominated. It doesn't feel like Tim Cook gets anywhere near the acclaim, just is talked about in the same level as Steve Jobs is. And probably, obviously Steve was a huge driver of creating the thing, but don't you get credit for keeping it rolling, keep innovating, keep making products? The AirPods, I've already bought like 7 pairs in a year. It's like a $10 billion business. But no, you just don't. Fair or not, which I think many would offer not fair. I would say he's definitely I think he's getting, unless this year is just horrendous, right? I'm trying to think of a year of a recent quarterback who was just beyond terrible. Well, think about some of the Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz probably a bad example because his stats, if Jordan Love was putting up his stats, he would get more time. What Matt Ryan looked like this year with the Colts, where it's like, this is not going to work. If that's what it looks like, regardless of the stats, and they're not winning, it's like, this is not going to work. He'll just get 1 year. And then LaFleur and Gutekunst will get another quarterback. But I think it would have to be beyond terrible for Love not to come back. Now, if it was beyond terrible and they had like the number 1 overall pick, which I think their team's too talented to be drafting super high, I think what's more likely is they're just solid, you know? When I say solid, like, you could argue there's not that big of a gap between 7 and 9 wins. Could be an interception here, could be a fumble there, could be a missed field goal here. It could be a block field goal there. So the gap is very, very small in terms of success and failures when it comes to winning 7 or 9 games. But if they went 9-8 with Jordan Love, I think he would get a boatload of credit. Do you know that Angie's List is now Angie? Your home for everything home? Listen, as someone who's been looking to buy a place and wants to do big projects once I do close on a house, I don't know where to start. Who am I going to contact? Angie can help you get the best price for your product. They have access to hundreds of thousands of pros, and they make it easy to research, compare, and hire pros to ensure the job is done well. And here's the other thing. The pros in their network are locally based. They have been rated and reviewed by others in your area who have actually used their service. In just a few taps in the Angie app or clicks on the website, you can have Angie tackle your home service project start to finish. How awesome does that sound? Here's the thing. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. I started watching your podcast a couple months ago. Appreciate that. But I'm a Dolphins fan and wanted to know your in-depth analysis on why you don't think Tua is a good quarterback. I 100%, 10% agree injuries are a huge concern. But just talking purely on the field, I think he played at a top 8 to 10 quarterback level last season. Led the league in passer rating, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 3,500 yards in only 13 games. Is it crazy to think Tua can be this generation's Drew Brees? Not in terms of making the Hall of Fame, but an outlier of a smaller quarterback with not great tools, exceptional accuracy, timing, and knowledge of the game? He does throw a beautiful deep ball. And they have 2 awesome deep ball receivers, right? They got 2 speed demons. Tyreek's incredible after the catch. But I don't think you could separate the 2. I think if Tua was just 100% healthy on the field, you'd be fine. The 49ers were going to NFC championship games in a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo can do that. Tua can do that. Now, Tua, like you're right on off these stats, better stats than Jimmy. They have more explosive receivers. But my point is, yeah, I think Tua, if he was just on the field all the time, but you can't separate the 2. He had a devastating injury in college, had his hip ripped off. He gets KO'd in NFL nonstop. So it's not that I don't think he's a good quarterback. I think he's fine. I think he's solid. Now, I don't really like smaller guys, especially when they're not great athletes. And part of it, he's a pocket quarterback that doesn't really know how to avoid big hits. But yeah, in a vacuum, if he was just on the field a lot, like Eli Manning for a decade, right, never missing games, you'd be fine. You'd win. You'd go to the playoffs. And then you never know in the playoffs. It's just, can you get a pick? Can you get the right sack at the right moment? Can your guy make a play? Most playoff games are not blowouts, right? So if he beat Drew Brees, I don't think I'd go that far. The injuries, man, I really can't separate them. But I by no means, I've come around. I probably thought he was going to be, I don't know if he was going to be a scrub. I didn't think he was going to be that good. He's better than I thought. Now, part of it, his offensive coordinator now is really good. You add Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek Hill was the best player in your team last year. Even if Tua hadn't gotten hurt, that's the MVP of your team. Even you'd have to admit that. He's one of the best players we've ever seen. I would say you could argue he's a top 5 wide receiver ever, right? With Jerry, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. You give me another name after those guys, I'd put Tyreek right up there. He's a winning player. He's a championship level player. He's a dominant player in the playoffs and the regular season. He can run all the routes. He can break tackles. He can go deep. He can go short. Fucking guy can do it all. Okay, here it is. This is a good one. I've been listening to your podcast, 3 and Out, for a while now, and I have a question. In your opinion, What is the lowest level that a former football player can claim that they were in the NFL? 1, was drafted or signed as a rookie free agent. 2, played in at least one preseason game. 3, made a practice squad. Well, if you make a practice squad, you're in the NFL. Made a 53-man, for sure. Played at least one snap. If 5 is the answer, could a rookie quarterback who lasted a year or two on a team holding a clipboard on the sideline but never played a snap in a regular game still count as an NFL player? Yes. I would say if you are drafted in the NFL, if I'm a 7th round draft pick and I don't make it after training camp, I get cut and they don't, get me on a practice squad, I made the NFL. Not only was I drafted, I played in the preseason. I think if you play in the preseason, like you're there during training camp, you're practicing and you're playing in preseason games, you made the NFL, right? Then we can argue the semantics of you had a 5-year career. I was 2 years. I was a practice squad guy. But I think if you get drafted and play in the preseason, like you had more than a cup of coffee. Like to me, a cup of coffee in the NFL would be like, got a couple tryouts and OTAs, never made it to training camp. If you're in training camp every single day, meeting rooms, playing in the preseason, I give you an NFL player. That's fucking hard. Even in 2023, when training camp is easier than like 1980s, it's still really, really impressive. You get drafted in the NFL, or even as an undrafted free agent, someone signs you, like a GM and a head coach wants you to be on their team. Even if you don't make the team, practice squad, for sure you're in the NFL. And clearly, if you're on the 53-man roster, you're literally in the NFL. I mean, you're on a team. We could argue, like, if you're on a practice squad, are you on the team? Technically not. Your wages aren't the same as a guy that's on the team. But to me, you are on the team because you practice every day. You're part of the weekly game plans. I would say I would probably start it the hybrid of 1 and 2. If you're drafted and play in the preseason / undrafted free agent play in the preseason. Now, there are different levels, right? Like, are you a professional baseball player if you never make it to the big leagues, but get drafted in the 2nd round and play in the minors for 7 years? I just think the way you preface it is like, I was a professional baseball player. I never got to the show, right? And if you get to the show for a September call-up, I got to play professional baseball. Okay, last one. Listen to it every episode, Drows. Bucks fan here. With most of the good players signed and with Baker Mayfield and Bowles leading the team's most important spots on a team, do you see most of the guys giving in after a couple weeks in hopes of getting a superstar quarterback in Caleb? Also, once Bowles inevitably leads us to a top 5 pick, should he go? The thing with a situation like this, most of us view the Bucks probably going to be pretty bad. Let's just say they are competing to have the worst record in the NFL. Well, it's one thing, even if you know it going in. I follow Jason Light on Instagram, their GM. He's in like Italy right now, having a good time. I don't blame him. I mean, he resurrected the Bucks by signing Tom Brady, got him to the playoffs, won a Super Bowl, like deserves credit. Won the division 3 years in a row, even if last year was kind of questionable, but Tom Brady changed the franchise. It's one thing, like, we're going to suck. It's cool. We want Caleb. Everything would be good. And if I told you right now, would you rather win like 7 games and have a kind of entertaining season and draft 13th overall, or just win 2 games, get the number 1 overall pick? You would easily choose 2 games and have the number 1 overall pick. The problem with that, if you're Todd Bowles' agent, Todd Bowles' wife, that is going to be an ugly season, man. You're going to be losing a ton of games, a lot of anger, a lot of ugliness, a lot of empty fans, a lot of empty seats with fans booing. It's an ugly, ugly process to get there. Like, trust the process. It was pretty ugly during that time. You become an embarrassment. You become a joke. For a long time, the Saints were called the Aints. The Bucks were called the Yucks. And in football, it's such a, what have you done for me lately? People turn on you quick. So if you're Todd Bowles, he definitely is not trying to get the number 1 overall pick. And I'm not putting that much stock into some of these spring videos of Baker Mayfield not completing passes, which don't look pretty. They don't. But if that does translate to the season, which it easily could, because Baker hasn't been good now for a while. I mean, I remember watching him last year when the Panthers played the 49ers. I'm like, this guy's terrible. This guy, he's your starting quarterback. You're going to lose, especially against good teams. It'd be Todd Bowles going to get the number 1 overall pick? I would say 50-50. And I would lean probably not, actually. Appreciate everyone firing in those DMs. Adios.